wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. Welcome to Coast AM. And once again, we hear of another Coast to Coast guest who has sadly passed on. This time, Dr. Fred Bell, UFO contactee, explorer of scientific mysteries. Dr. Bell died shortly after being interviewed by Jesse Ventura for an upcoming conspiracy show episode. Frequent guest on Coast to Coast. Just a few months ago, I had an opportunity to talk with him. Here we are with Fred Bell. Fred, what are some of the symptoms of electronic harassment?
Well, there's a bunch of them, and there's also environmental symptoms, too. But just a few are sleep deprivation, fatigue, malaise, irritability, shortening of the attention span, daytime fatigue attacks I see on a lot of people, on older people, cataracts, blood changes, circulatory problems, permanent deterioration of the central nervous system. Another one is very common is blurred vision and loss of concentration, whole body jerks, shaking of the body, heat flashes, artificial fever, shortness of the breath, loss of control of the vocal cords, which is because of that radar flashlight studies, that kind of stuff, unusual forgetfulness, things like that, and sudden sexual urges, suicidal, homicidal thoughts, panic attacks. And the biggest one that I see of all in the people I do is some form of depression and extreme paranoia. I see that. And sometimes in the environment around a targeted person, some people out there I know are going to relate to this, is a stoppage of power to appliances, manipulation of appliance settings, temporary failures that fix themselves, movements of objects off and off the shelf, under the floor causing breakage, precision and manipulation of switches and controls, premature failure of appliances and computer failures and errors. That's just some of the stuff that goes on. I mean, it does affect the environment, especially if they're doing the millimeter wave stuff, which is a common delivery system.
What is confusion weaponry, Fred?
Well, confusion weaponry it was basically brought about several years ago where we were using thoughts to, frequencies that mess up the thinking system of the body. Okay, this was the original, how it really all started. Later on, it got... there were different devices developed that were neurostimulators from a distance. I remember in the very beginning, they were developing devices where they had a control, an implant in your head, and then it was, you would see the effect of it in your head. Later on, it became remote control, and now it's done in a difference, almost on a quantum level. And it's basically impulses that are sent to the body that cause that person to go into some confusion state. A good example of that was just recently. That lady that was on the news the other night, a little blonde girl. You might have seen this. It was about a week ago.
Oh, the one who had they not a stroke, but they think something happened to her.
Yeah.
She had some kind of severe migraine, they said.
Yeah, and she never ever had a migraine before. That to me is probably they targeted her just to see what would happen while she was on the air, because there were no symptoms afterwards. There was no damage to her body, no neurological damage or even symptoms. That's confusion weaponry, and that was a good example. I was really surprised to see them pull that out of their hat and immediately, apply that so quickly, but it did. I mean,
that was one of the strangest videos I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, the founder, the term confusion weaponry came originally from Dr. Ross Ade, who was formerly of the Brain Research Center at the University of Southern California, and he worked at Loma Linda, and he worked on the Pandora project, which is part of that stuff that was with the Soviets bombarding us, and it was his definition was specific behavior modifications of electromagnetic means, and the chemical part of it. Now, there's chemistry involved here, and that causes what's I call a calcium efflux, okay? And this is usually from the microwave side of it, and when this calcium efflux happens, it throws out the blood pressure rates, and because remember, calcium ions are necessary to make the heart beat through the atriums of the heart. If you interfere with that, you start getting voids in the brain, lack of oxygen in the brain, and so the blood pressure starts to go up or down, and that causes a panic attack. So you can see how that goes into a panic attack. And if it goes into a panic attack, then that person's going to run down, if it happens more than once, then they're going to run to Big Pharma for some drugs, some SSRI drugs or something, which brings the drug industry on board. But, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that goes on, and this was going back, this goes back to the 60s, okay? And then in the 80s, Dr. Aday demonstrated how 147 megahertz field with a power level of just 0.8 milliwatts per square centimeter causes this calcium influx. And then what happens is they used 147 megahertz carrier, and they modulate it down to 6 to 20 hertz, which is ELF. And the heart likes to beat, I think the heart beats somewhere around 8.1 or 8.2 hertz. So, and it's very easy to overpower, the human body only generates about 20 millivolts, average person in the brain, sending it down through the central nervous system, which then has to be distributed through all the electrical factions of the body, which is everything. So it doesn't take much with a small millimeter beam to interfere with that delicate process of the human being. And because when you go to that millimeter wavelength stuff, which is considered between 30 and 300 gigahertz, that makes it pencil beam-like, laser-like technology that once a person's zeroed in on from all of these things we've been discussing about voice and speech patterns and listening to them on the computer and the phone and all of that, it's no problem to zero in with 2 pencil beams on that person and do all kinds of disruptive things, including introduce a audio component between the 2 small millimeter wavelength beams, which has an audio component. And people then hear themselves, somebody's talking in their head. And some of the people I've talked to say that, one lady specific, I remember, she says, I could hear it was in the control room. I mean, I could hear people in the background talking, and these voices are in my head. And this is very unusual. And then this is the kind of stuff that we run across, and not just one case, a lot. If it was just one, I'd shine it on.
Whatever happened to the weaponry of the audio weaponry, where they could turn it on and people would just go down to their knees? It would hurt their ears.
Well, that's very much alive right now. They use it on crowd control. That's considered the friendlier form of crowd control.
I mean, I haven't seen it used in the Middle East, so they don't have it, right?
Well, they make it right down here in San Diego, so one of the companies does. Yes, they will.
Well, I mean, we have it. I don't think.
Oh yeah, we have it.
Yeah,
I've seen it. It's on a big trailer. It has a big antenna, and it works on heat. What happens is it goes to like 1/10 of an inch under the skin, and so it starts getting really hot. And so this audio beam puts out this heat on the body, and they get so hot they just burn up and they just start freaking out. It's not so much the high volume. Yeah, there's a screeching to it, but there's a heat faction that they use on it.
Tell me about what they're doing with satellites, Fred.
Okay. Where do you want me to start? We started off with the Corona project a long time ago. They were launched from Vandenberg, and that was spy stuff. And then later on, we came along with the Misty series, which then became like the Keyhole satellites. The big launch when NASA got involved was in '91 with the STS-38. Then we have the Iridium satellites, and we had several other satellite companies go up there. And these satellites, one friend of mine started Iridium. I know the guy very well, and he's retired now. But these satellites not only do things down here on Earth, these satellites, because of different countries being involved, go spy on themselves. They got satellites up there that cruise around and go from one satellite to another, monitoring the frequencies that it's putting out and where it's transmitting it to. Yeah, but what they do, I mean, the first time it came to public scrutiny was, I forget the incident, it's ain't in my head, but I remember what happened.
Was it a Chinese satellite that went down, or was it a Russian one?
Well, it might have been a Chinese one, but the first time that we actually saw the RF stuff was getting some birds off a runway at an airport. They beamed in on a bunch of pigeons, and then they admitted that that's what caused these birds to get out of there because they were having a problem. Now, as far as the Chinese satellites, I talked to the director at JPL a while back, and I asked him about when they were launching in North Korea, the satellites, actually North Korea, if we were, remember they'd get up about a quarter of a mile and blow up? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I asked them if Kim Jong-il's satellites were doing, we were blowing them out of the sky with our Star Wars technology. And the guy he wouldn't answer that phone, so on the phone. So but the guy that started Iridium is the guy that hooked me up to the guy at JPL. And I'm not mentioning names. So he went and got on a secure phone. And I told him, because I told him, don't BS me, and I've been down this road before, and I'm with a so-and-so person who actually got him on the phone. So he admitted, yeah, they have a technology. Well, it's pretty simple now, but they knock things out of the sky with EMP pulses. I don't think they lasered those rockets. I think they just knocked down guidance systems.
This just sounds like old Tesla technology, doesn't it?
Yeah, Tesla was the very first guy. I remember 47, he had the Tesla something or other. I forget what it was called. But then they came in and they took away from him, they confiscated his papers. And one of the Tesla generators, one of the Tesla things that he made was the beginning of that actual science. It's come a long way now, but they can not only use it on humans, they can use it on animals. They can use it on a computer. They can use it on your car. Of course, you probably know the Highway Patrol around here in California is developing devices to shut down, electronic ignitions in cars when they're chasing, make car chases safer and all that kind of stuff. So the technology is blossoming all over the place. It really is.
Is it good or bad?
Well, if you catch, the other day I saw this horrible crash on a night chase here in California. I know you're back in the Midwest.
No, I'm in L.A. right now.
Oh, are you? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. I thought you were back east in the Midwest. So anyway, this guy in the end of the crash, he broadsided this poor lady, and the cops shouldn't have been chasing him that close. I mean, they were pushing him, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. He broadsided this lady, and it broke her neck and her back. And
jeez.
Cops didn't even. The ambulance came. The person was dead in the water. They didn't move out of their car, but the person did live because it was on Channel 5 the next day. And so to eliminate that kind of ridiculousness, they could have followed this bad guy in a helicopter, and got him eventually that way. So from that point, the technology is good. But unfortunately, with the government programs in place, the depopulation policies in place, trying to get rid of people, the deceit that's going on, they're going to use it for a bad reason. Bad reasons, and that's.
I've always wondered, though, Fred. Let me ask you this: I
Yeah.
mean, a guy robs a bank, so you legitimately know he did this, right?
Yeah.
Gets in his car, and now he's got this high-speed police chase down the freeway.
Right.
And TV cameras are there, so you're watching the thing live.
Right.
What would be wrong? This is kind of a rhetorical question. If they had a missile system in a helicopter and blew the guy up.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I mean, he's a bank robber. Maybe he shot someone. I mean, why screw around and let him drive through the freeways, maybe hit someone and kill somebody else? Why don't you just go there and blow him up?
Yeah, or just disable the whole vehicle. That's a great idea.
I mean, somebody will say, oh, my God, what if he's not guilty? What if it's this? Come on.
Well,
These would be with obvious cases.
Yeah, I don't think that the police departments have the budgets for that yet, but there's some really keen infrared laser systems now that you can aim. The military has them. You can look through like a finder scope, and they could just put, with a helicopter, they could just go right above that guy's car and just cut a nice little beam right through the top of his car and go right into him and just
get him. But the reason why
that's a here and now.
But the reason why nobody wants this because they don't trust government.
Well, no, who does?
That's it. I mean, some of these things could be used for legitimate purposes, for helping, for ensuring safety of the public, but people just don't trust government.
No, they don't. I mean, do you?
No, I don't.
I haven't.
I don't. I want to.
Yeah, well.
I want to more than you can imagine.
Well,
but I don't.
You mentioned in the very beginning of the show about Blue Beam and it's so that project is so alive if you know how to see it. And the first thing the government did, is take God out of the Constitution, God out of the Pledge of Allegiance, God off the currency. All of that's gone. It's just part of it. It's an erosion. It's fascism. That's what's going on, and you have to trust in the fact that your government will lie to you. I mean,
just today,
yeah,
the Supreme Court ruled that parents cannot sue big pharmaceutical companies over the vaccines.
Yeah.
I mean, here we go again. I mean, the little guy gets the short end of the stick.
Yeah, and I'm reading this book by this, forget his name, but he's over in England. He came over here. You probably had him on your show.
Andrew Wakefield.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just had him on a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, my company Paradigm, we have worked with kids that are dyslexic and harmed by vaccines. I remember when I got vaccinated, when I was a kid, I got stomach cramps, and that's a huge stomach cramp. I would lay down, a few weeks afterwards, I lay down and lay in tremendous pain. I'll never forget this. Well, colonitis is one of the side effects of these vaccines. And I had that when I was a kid, so it was happening not just recently, but it was happening back then. Now I think because we have, a better communication system, I think people are becoming aware of the debilitating effects of these vaccines. It's not just, the kids becoming basically stupid all of a sudden and losing their motor abilities and all kinds of other things. There's a lot of far-reaching effects in the immune system. And I also believe that, having, if we wanted to go into the history of big pharma, starting with, IG Farben and the Rockefellers and all that, and the money and all the corporations they set up, which became Merck and all these companies today, we could go there, but I don't think we have time tonight. But if you go down that line, you'll see that even in the Nazis in World War II, in their concentration camps, these kinds of experiments were going on even then.